I think it's a difficult topic. I mean, once you've done so much with the characters before, it's hard to develop them further. But when something comes along and tries to do something new, it's a way for the series to heal. Even if it changes the identity of the characters, it can still work as long as it's both faithful or unique in its own way. And I think a lot of games and movies understand that. But then there's the ones that haven't understood that fact that it's something that doesn't connect.
Well, if they don't care, then why should we? I mean, what good thing stood out to you?
Okay, might as well get this done and over with. Hey everybody, Nitsa Gamer here for another Sonic Countdown. Let's talk about Sonic Boom. I played this joke already in my last countdown, just play the goddamn clip.
Let's roll.
Sonic Boom, also known as Sonic Toon in Japan, is a spin-off franchise that Sega created to run parallel to the main Sonic series. This is their attempt to gain a new generation while also being able to expand the Sonic series in many ways they couldn't where they were at, which resulted in a TV show they haven't had for 8 years, 2 video game prequels, and heck, even merchandise and comic books. Now, the show itself is targeted mainly towards children, but at the same time, the series is going to stay faithful to the main counterparts of the characters while alternating their personality a little bit for a fresher take. And it's the first Sonic TV show to appear in CG. They even got the head of the Sonic team to see if the new series would stay faithful to the Sonic characters and universe while still being its own unique thing. Well, gee, someone missed the last 6 months of production, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. We Do Productions is a company that is behind the development of the TV show, where Shattered Crystal was developed by Senzaru Games, and Rise of Lyric was developed by Big Red Button Entertainment. Big Red Button is a company that was founded by Bob Raffi, who was also an art director of Naughty Dog, who did work for games like Crash Bandicoot, Uncharted, and the Jax and Daxter series. Bob Raffi ended up becoming the CEO for Big Red Button, and Sega saw this gaming company as their best opportunity to create a great action game for the Sonic Boom franchise, considering the background that he had. And the whole process literally took since 2011 to develop the Sonic Boom universe. So, okay, for as promising as development goes, this new franchise should be pretty promising, right? Well, the TV show has been getting average to positive reviews, so that's pretty good. The video games, however, were quite a disappointment. And with video games being Sonic's main medium, then you know this is going to cause a ton of backlash from fans. Shattered Crystal, while not the worst Sonic game you can play, I hear from most people it's just overall boring and generic. Whereas Rise of Lyric, on the other hand, was already getting negative reviews before it even came out. It also doesn't help that Sega refused to send out review copies just to avoid negative criticism, which of course is exactly what they got. But to make matters worse, Sega was having a financial problem just before the game's release, which later caused over 300 employees to get fired and the company to start relocating, and even reducing themselves down to mostly mobile gaming and digital downloading. Holy motherfucking shit! That's some serious controversy for Sega, but much to their failure, Rise of Lyric sold the least amount of copies than any other Sonic game, period. And yes, Rise of Lyric as a whole is a very awful game. In fact, it got criticized so much that it has been officially listed as one of the worst games ever made, and arguably worse than Sonic 06. Oh my god, it kills me, and I can't express any remorse because I absolutely hated this game. It drove me insane for like so many reasons that I'm just gonna let it all out. And even though this is pretty much a topic that has been beaten on a dead horse to its skeleton, where there's practically no skeleton left, I might as well talk about my top 7 worst things in Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. Why top 7? Well, 1, it's the magic number in Sonic. And 2, I'm going to be following up on another countdown next week, so be sure to stay tuned for that. So without further ado, let's talk about the worst of the worst in the top 7 worst things in Sonic Boom: Rise of Lyric.
Couldn't walk away from something broken.
Number 7. The character changes. Now, upon seeing the new designs that the Sonic Boom universe has given our main characters, there's no doubt in my mind that people would be complaining about how different they look and how their original look was so much better.
Whoa, the picture's finally released? Oh boy. Well, at least they won't do something stupid like make Sonic's arms blue, and all of a sudden I feel the urge to make a GameStop employee.
And while I will definitely say I am one of those fans that like the original designs much more, the only design that came out distracting to me was Knuckles' redesign. And no, not because of his fingers, which I think is pretty stupid to harp on, but more in the fact that it was redundant to give him more muscle when he can be just the way he was. However, for this point, it is not the redesigns that I have an issue with. For one, they are decent changes to make the characters look different to their counterparts for the TV show, but you can still look at the design of Sonic and say, yes, this still looks like Sonic, except his body is slightly different, he has fur on his arms, and he's wearing a scarf. A Nathan Drake scarf for that matter. So, what is it that I have a problem with? Well, it would have to be the changes to the characters themselves, their personality. Now, to be fair, out of the 7 characters that come from the main series, not including Orbot and Cubot, 3 of them are actually decent and, for the most part, stay faithful to what their characters are like from the main series. Metal Sonic makes a return who we haven't seen since Sonic Heroes. Now, unlike Sonic Heroes, he actually has no line of dialogue in the entire game, which I think works better since the majority of the writing in this game is bad to begin with. But for what they use Metal Sonic for, it never really comes off as insulting or even that bad. He becomes one of the later bosses that you will fight on Slowpoke Island, and he's definitely up there as one of the better bosses that you will fight in this game, alongside the fight against Dr. Eggman. And speaking of which, Dr. Eggman himself. While he does have some painful lines to say and villainy cliches, he does continue to bring out his comedic charm that makes him likable from the main series. And then out of the 4 main characters, the only one who stays the most faithful to their original self and even manages to make the dialogue less painful is Tails. While he does have to say some words like efficiently, which they probably looked up in a thesaurus while writing the script, Tails seems to have more of an understanding of what Lyric is feeling and why he is doing what he's doing, where Sonic is much more careless, but we'll get to him in a minute. It seems like out of the 4 main characters, they do seem to keep Tails faithful, as he does represent the identifiable everyday guy that most people can usually relate to. But unfortunately, while they have one main character who stays faithful, the other 3 are completely faithless. Now, I know in a spin-off series you gotta be able to change the characters around in order for a fresher take, since this is a whole new universe. I get that, I totally understand that. But good God, what did you guys do to them? Let's start off with Amy first. Amy Rose is a polarized character from the main series that people either seem to like or hate, mostly because of her fangirlish attitude when she's constantly trying to seduce Sonic into falling in love with her. Regardless of whether if you like her or not, she did have a personality that makes her such an optimistic character, who is both loyal to her friends and even has reformed 3 people in thinking about what they were doing. Whereas Amy in Rise of Lyric is quite bland, which is strange because in the TV show they seem to give Amy a decent personality where she has a kind heart, sometimes can be the voice of reason, and doesn't constantly try to seduce Sonic. Heck, in one episode, Translate This, it's briefly hinted that she actually does have a secret crush on him that nobody knows about.
Shut that thing off before it tells Sonic that I love.
What was he saying?
Nothing important.
So in a way, they updated Amy's character in the TV show, where, as ironically in the game, they downgraded her, giving her no personality whatsoever. I think the only thing that's trying hard enough to give Amy any personality is her voice actress Cindy Robinson. Whenever she does have to say those painful lines every time she picks up a bunch of reins or goes on a bounce pad, she does add a bit of joy in her voice.
Stop! Yes, rings, tails, friendship bracelets. Now?
What? Now they're making Amy a chick? Now I'm definitely gonna mace somebody.
But I wouldn't say that redeems the character in any way, even if Cindy does a great job giving Amy a voice that doesn't sound so Minnie Mouse-ish. Especially with whoever the they had voice her in Sonic Generations.
You saved me, Sonic. I was afraid I'd never be able to flirt with you again.
Sorry, I think the role you're looking for is on another network. But for Amy's weakness though, it does not come out nearly as insulting as Knuckles and Sonic. Knuckles was an independent individual who was serious when it comes to doing what is right, but can be gullible and short-tempered. While the TV show does resemble a little bit of that personality, they wrote his character completely backwards. And in the game, he's like the exact opposite of what Knuckles is supposed to be. Mostly because they make him a complete dumbass.
Amy, Knuckles, go left!
Give me a sec. I'm on it.
Disclose Hedgehog location immediately.
How do we know we can trust you enough to tell you that Sonic and Tails are a few levels...
God, please don't play anymore, it's just too painful to watch. I don't know what went wrong with this character, but they f***ed up big time. So, because of this, you would think Knuckles would be the worst character in this game. Well, as much as I'm gonna be hated for this, I think Sonic has the most controversial change. Now, Sonic is supposed to be a really fun character with a strong heart, love for adventure, and a strong sense of justice fighting for what he believes is right. There's so much to love about this guy, I would love to have him as a friend. But if I were in the Sonic Boom universe, I would stay the heck away from this guy. Why? Well, honestly, I think the reason is so controversial, it deserves its own point later on this list.
Guys, can we put a pin in this for a second?
And finally, we have Shadow the Hedgehog. How else can I say this? He's absolutely terrible! I mean, good God, what the f*** did you guys do to him? It's for one thing to make changes to a character's original personality, but it's another thing to completely miss what makes this character so good. And this seriously was approved by Sega? I just can't. I mean, there's no developmental reason, no something. Just play the clip.
Not so fast, Sonic.
Well, okay, at least to Shao's credit, he does threaten Sonic with his new motive.
Not a great time, Shadow. I'm a little busy saving the world.
Saving the world? You? Don't make me laugh. You're weak. And you know what makes you weak? Your loyalty to your pathetic friends. You're not going through that portal. I'm gonna show you just how weak you are.
I don't know what I find more ridiculous, for the fact they turned Shadow into a whiny child, or for the fact that there are people who defend this as being faithful to his original personality. Really, people? This is what you think Shadow the Hedgehog is like? Because if so, you honestly don't know shit! Look guys, the concept may seem like filler on paper, but they do give him a great backstory that makes us understand why he doesn't care for humanity, but is also given a reason to save it. The investment was never in how much cooler or more badass than he can be than Sonic. He was a great character because of the choices he makes. And his reasons for fighting against Sonic was never because, hey, we're both hedgehogs, I'm gonna prove myself better than you because you suck, nah 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 nah. It was because he was willing to end humanity due to what GUN has done to Gerald Robotnik and his closest friend Maria. It was for identifiable reasons, and if Sonic was gonna get in the way, then that proves Sonic is a legit threat to put Eggman's plans into motion. And in Shadow the Hedgehog, he has to remember his past while given more of a reason to destroy humanity. Black Doom gives him any reason to become careless and is willing to fight against anyone to find out the truth and bring order and justice to what he sees as right. And again, Sonic proves as a legit threat to him if he's fighting against the humans. It was never for the fact he wants to prove himself better than Sonic because he's a hedgehog as well, but because he's living in the darkness of his past that gives him a difficult choice in what to do after GUN's inhumane actions. But it was his choice in the end to put his past behind him and do what is right, rather than punish humanity for the military's deeds. And in Sonic Boom, he's given no reason to even be in the story. He only appears in 3 scenes throughout the game, and they are all completely pointless. And his reason just comes down to him intimidating Sonic for no good reason except just to be a bully. Sega, how can you let this even pass? Either give us more information on why he's in the game, or just don't bother using him at all. At least in Shattered Crystal, he was brainwashed to go against Sonic, but even then, he didn't even need to be in that game either. If anything, he just seems to be in the Sonic Boom universe mostly just for fan service rather than legit potential. It's arguable whether if Sonic or Shadow is worse in my opinion, but as I said, I will address Sonic's character more in a later point on this countdown. Yes, it is that bad.
Unbelievable.
Yes, I was, thank you.
That was 7 characters I had to go through. And while half of them are decent, it's pretty bad when the other half are faithless that even the way they are written as a standalone game is bad. If you don't know what makes these characters great, then you know you're not the person to write such characters.
Because they have no souls.
Hey!
He's right.
Whatever. Good night, guys.
Number 6. The dialogue. Now, on the one hand, the story overall is quite generic and could have been properly executed and more developed. But when you get down to it, the story overall is not really bad in comparison to Sonic 06. Sonic 06 had numerous problems with its story, including plot holes and trying way too hard to be something more complex than the Sonic Adventure games. And since Rise of Lyric is a prequel to a TV show targeted towards kids, then a generic plot is the least of its worries. However, when it does come down to bad writing, I would mostly point at the dialogue. I mean, what more can I say about it? Everyone has already made fun of these lines.
There's no time like the present.
Wait, there are presents?
No.
Oh, Sonic! You know what's better than an ambush?
An ambush with ice cream?
That sounds delicious. But no! The post-ambush ambush!
Our unfinished business is finished.
Your not so repetitive dialogue is repetitive. What? What more is there to say that nobody else has said already? The jokes made by the characters are not funny, it's constant painful one-liners, and its writing is so childish. I mean, yes, whoever wrote this, we get that this is targeted towards kids, but even by kids' standards, this is really bad writing. While I won't deny the dialogue has definitely been the weakest aspect in most Sonic games, most of them do manage well with likable characters and an understanding of their motivations. Whereas here, we get the motivations and the idea of where to go, and yet the characters are constantly stating the obvious. Yeah, like I'm a 7-year-old who needs to know where to go.
Door below. We should find a way to divert the beam. That wall looks weak. That wall looks breakable. I see a bounce pad. This should get me out of here. Could this shaft of light trigger the exit door?
Look, ramps.
We can use these as ramps. Game, I'm not 2 years old.
I mean, don't get me wrong, some moments of dialogue are okay, like moments where expositions are needed is necessary, and some lines between the characters are alright.
Clef, thank goodness we found you.
I didn't know I was missing.
You okay?
Surprisingly, yes. You think I'd be winded and tired, but I'm holding up pretty well. You?
A little singed from the furnace thing and a few lasers, but all in all, pretty good.
But take Cliff's response for example when he finds out that Sonic and his friends had accidentally released Lyric from his prison. What does he respond to such horrible news?
Not cool, Sonic.
Yeah, because that's what everybody says when something terrible happens.
Not fucking cool, Kaiju!
And it also doesn't help that there's constant bantering between our main characters. And it wouldn't be so bad if they were humorous or it added to their character, but you don't get any of that.
We did it!
You said we. I heard it.
Nah, you have too much dirt in your ears. Big deal. Maybe I loosened it.
Yeah, you keep thinking that.
Oh, help! Let's just stop this guy and then argue, okay?
It's for one thing to have a generic plot, but it definitely doesn't help when your dialogue is so painful to listen to. You swear, an episode of Dora the Explorer is devoid of insulting your intelligence.
Well, that was a grind. Get it?
I did, and that does not qualify as humorous.
You didn't get it. Let's get going.
If you are looking for some good writing, you will not find any of that in this game.
You must fighting style is prehistoric.
Number 5. The combat. The last time we had any kind of combat in a Sonic game was the Werehog stages from Sonic Unleashed. It was the most criticized aspect of the game, mostly because in comparison of how action-packed and fun the daytime stages were. But honestly, I would take the Werehog stages any day compared to the combat in Rise of Lyric. All it is just destroying robots with button mashing and using the inner beam to throw enemies. Now, it wouldn't be so bad if the combat wasn't extremely repetitive. It takes up most of the game than the actual running sections themselves, or heck, even the puzzle solving. The worst would have to be in the second level of the game, the abandoned research facility. The majority of it is nothing but puzzle solving and combat. And while the puzzle solving is just basic, the combat is everywhere, and it comes usually after you solve a puzzle. And it doesn't help when you are forced to do the next level, Lyric's weapon facility, where the combat is just as much, if not more, than the second level. Just, oh my god guys, did no one think for 1 second that maybe, hey, we should have more speed sections and reduce the amount of combat in this game? I think I spent 70% doing more combat than I did doing anything else. But it's not just for the fact that it's everywhere. It's nothing but button mashing with absolutely no variety to it at all. At least with Sonic Unleashed, you can do combo attacks and the battle did not last longer than the amount of hits it takes to finish off one enemy. I'm not even joking. The amount of hits it takes off to finish one robot alone is a lot. I don't even know the amount. I don't think there's anything more I can say about this. It's just boring and extremely repetitive. If you haven't played this game, trust me when I say you are saving yourself from the headaches that these combat sections will give you. And honestly, I would take the Werehog any day. Sonic the Werehog is awesome. There, I admitted it. Rise of Lyric.
If I never see another robot again, it'll be too soon. Okay, this is getting old.
He's purposely driving himself insane. How long can he go on before he finally snaps? Yeah, and he didn't even script a proper ending for the second countdown. What's the point if you're just gonna make the fans more depressed? Hey, what did he get? S of S? There's 2 attachments.
Number 4. Bygone Island. Ugh, God, was this hub ever so bad. Now, you're probably wondering why I'm leaving Cliff's excavation site out as the worst point. Well, that's because it's not as bad as most people make the first hub out to be. For one, yeah, it is devoid of making the visuals impressive, and there's barely any NPCs aside from the ones needed for the main quest, or mostly the side quests. Obviously, it needed more than what we got. Heck, we do see Quincy talking to 2 miners before noticing Sonic and his friends heading over to Cliff. And while we do see some of those miners during the only mandatory side quest, why couldn't they have placed more of these miners around the place? You don't need to have them speak or anything, but you could have at least gave something to make this place seem like a working site rather than a bland, empty landscape. However, to its very little credit, it's an excavation site, so this is probably enough NPCs as is. And being an abandoned mining ground that holds ancient relics, I think the lack of plant life is less of a thing to complain about. Even getting around to places isn't so bad, as there are speed sections and moments where you can run on water, which is great for shortcuts, so you're not following the same boring path as you were the first time you came here. And for as huge as it is, I never got lost. The only moment where I couldn't figure out where to go was where to put the first crystal, but it didn't take long to find out what to do as there were collectibles around the place and it plays on more of a linear setup. Bygone Island, on the other hand, has thousands of problems. The outside, for one, is poorly placed together, that it doesn't hold up to how some of the concept art showed it was supposed to be, and this hub is so large that getting lost is easy. And with the pace that the characters are running, it just frustrates the heck out of you when you can't run fast like Sonic is supposed to. And the inside of town, well, it does have its decent setup, doesn't help for multiple reasons. 1, getting collectibles is obnoxious. 2, it's difficult to tell where to go the first time, making it overall poorly laid out with no indication or direction whatsoever. 3, every time you walk between an area of the hub, the game has to render the next area, causing frame rates to drop severely. Twice! And this was never fixed in the patch, which I guess is understandable as they had to fix that broken yet fun to use jump glitch. And 4th is the camera. While the camera on the outside is okay, the inside has the camera zoomed in obnoxiously close at you that it's not only hard to tell where you are going, but you feel a lack of control, making your character walk off ledges or walk around unsmoothly, making the overall exploration feel so irritating to go through. And don't try going through this game in 2-player mode, as every problem I mentioned before will become even worse than I made this out to be. And it doesn't stop there. If you thought Cliff's excavation site lacked NPCs, Bygone Island literally has less than, okay, maybe the same amount of NPCs, but it feels more empty in this hub. There's no one in town except for Mayor Dink, who doesn't give you an award if you help build his construction sites.
We will look into them. I'm sure you will take the credit.
Of course. I am a politician.
And the other NPCs are all used for side quests, and they're all separated and in their own areas of the map. You can't help but wonder where the other citizens are. There's millions of problems to complain about this hub, but I will address one more problem, and one that I think most can relate to. If you went into this blind, it probably took you a while to figure out how to get to the spot marked on your map. But it probably took you even more of a longer time trying to figure out how to open this goddamn gate. I kid you not, it took me over 40 minutes to get to the next level because of the lack of direction this game offers. And it differs for many people, but case in point, it takes longer than it should. As much as the combat is repetitive and gives me headaches, Bygone Island is worse because it's tedious and it lacks action.
I think it has charm. Just needs a little help.
And while this hub looks way better than the hubs in Sonic 06, Bygone Island was a horrible setup with tons of problems. That for some reason the beta hub looks so f***ing beautiful! Christ guys, that was potential thrown out the window for a game with potential thrown out the window. Look people, even if you somehow like this game, you cannot deny that there are more problems with this hub than there is to admire. And goddammit, I want to try out that beta hub.
This looks like it's seen better days.
Number 3. The Blue Dick. AKA Sonic the Hedgehog.
It's the blue arms, isn't it?
That's right guys, you heard me. The third worst thing in this game is the main protagonist himself. This point is not only bad, but I think this is really controversial on their part. Remember back in number 7 when I said I would give Sonic his own reason why he sucks? Well, here it is. And I know a lot of you are going to disagree with me on this and find this to be nothing but nitpicking, but I got some serious issues with what they did to Sonic. You guys can argue if Shadow or if even Knuckles is worse, but when you Man of Steel your main protagonist, you know you f***ed up big time. For one, Sonic's character does have a love for adventure, but more in a negative way than his counterpart when it comes to how he treats others. His jokes and one-liners are constant and they're not even funny. Yeah, Tails and Knuckles acknowledge his jokes are bad at one point in the game, but does that really make it any better? They literally take the fun and heart that made Sonic such a great character and chucked it out the window to make him a heartless dick, which surprisingly is more insulting than the changes made to the other characters. But then we get to the controversial part of this entire game, which is a moment that for some reason people seem to overlook. And it surprises me that very few people have acknowledged how bad this was, but I can say I was definitely one of those people who got pissed off. In the game's plot, Sonic is the reason Lyric was imprisoned for 1,000 years because of his attempt to destroy all organic lifeforms. But much to Sonic's confusion, he has no idea how Lyric even knows him or why there are paintings of Sonic and Tails at the door of his tomb. And it's not until Sonic and Tails go back in time to retrieve the map that it turns out it's because of Sonic the ancients were able to capture Lyric for his evil deeds. Now, the way this should play out is that Sonic tries to convince Lyric not to wipe out the entire planet, and therefore use logic and emotional reason to try to make him think about what he's doing. And if all fails, then this gives enough time for the ancients to capture Lyric and praise Sonic for his efforts to stop him. And Sonic will be like, well, Tails, we tried. And therefore Lyric will actually blame Sonic and actually give a reason to go up against him when Sonic did actually try to save Lyric. Let's see if the game does exactly that.
Who are you?
You and I have unfinished business.
Hey dude, I just meant you. Oh my god, you are crazy. Hey, you trapped me in here!
See you in 1,000 years.
So, release me, maybe.
It is just despicable what they made Sonic do in this cutscene. And it seems like I am in the minority here. People either seem to be blind to this scene, or kind of give themselves no reason to care about the character anyway because the game's bad to begin with. I mean, how can you defend such a shocking moment like this? This is Sonic the Hedgehog, a character with a strong sense of justice and free will, practically leaving Lyric for dead. And even if we know Lyric does live on after this is pretty much saying, hey, you're stereotypically evil, and I'm stereotypically good, so if I make you angry even more, I'm pretty sure nothing bad will come of it. Morons! Where is the logic here? Heck, forget about the logic. Where is the heart and soul that Sonic is supposed to have? I mean, what are you trying to teach your kids, game? That if you lock a bully in a closet, it will make him less of a meanie than he already was? Good God, if you're gonna have Sonic make a risky decision, you could have at least portrayed it in a way where it was more justified. And this is so out of character because Sonic was never a jerk. At least not to this extreme. He was always willing to help people through their problems and see a better way out of a situation. Hell, maybe while you guys are at it, why don't you just make Sonic take the easy way out when perfect chaos floods the city? Yeah, good idea, Tikal. Or maybe instead of Sonic using the kindness of his heart, he should have told Merlina, look, every world has its end. Suck it up, bitch. But in all seriousness though, both deal with really complex emotions and harsh situations to which Sonic uses nothing but the goodness of his heart to see the best in things. However, this is such a horrible representation of showing that kind heart Sonic is supposed to have. By leaving Lyric to the ancients, it only makes Lyric even more angry than he already was. And while he did go to the extreme to try to wipe out everybody on Earth, there could have been that small chance that he could have been saved or reformed. After all, it could very well be the ancients' fault for not having him aware of the consequences when he was working with the crystals. That's like saying go in this toxic room without mentioning you need a radiation suit. So in a way, Lyric does have a right to be pissed. It's just his extremes are, of course, extreme. And by Sonic doing this to him, I surprisingly feel pity for the poor guy. He's a generic villain that I surprisingly wanted to win. At first, Lyric became my favorite character because of this scene, although it probably comes as no surprise that he slithered down the best character list since they never develop his character any further from this point on. But for how they represent Sonic as this malicious jerk with no remorse comes as not only an insult to the character himself, but to the soul of the series as a whole. Say what you want to defend the scene. Oh, it may have been heartless, but Sonic did the right thing in order to stop Lyric. Really? Making a villain even more angry when you know what's going to happen in the future? I mean, change in fate might alter a lot in their present time, but hey, that never became a problem when you helped Tucker by fixing his mistake that would last for 1,000 years. If Sonic and Tails can turn that around, why not reform Lyric himself? Oh, well, if you were in that situation, I'm sure you'd probably do the same thing too. Okay, maybe most people would do what Sonic did, but this is Sonic the Hedgehog, the guy with a strong sense of justice and a heart of gold. If Sonic from the main series were in this situation and he did exactly what this Sonic did, I would not only f***ing cringe, but it would put the final pin to the coffin to the series as a whole, probably permanently. Sure, he did something similar with Eraser Jin, except he imprisoned him for an eternity. But as heartless as that scene is, and I will admit kinda bothers me a little, Eraser was beyond the point of redemption since his hatred was more legit and has been with him for longer than Lyric's entire lifetime. But even with this controversial moment, it doesn't help that they hastily rushed what I suppose was their attempt at character development by having Sonic realize that his friends are his strength. There's literally no progression as Sonic is being a dick to his friends at the pit, and literally, with no character development, he changes to realize he wouldn't have gone this far without them. Guys, character development is about the progression of what changes a character, not a sudden force and realization, or otherwise it just comes off as generic and unfocused. Hell, this scene before they enter Slowpoke Island is called Taking Responsibility. Oh god, you gotta be f***ing kidding me. Plus, Sonic shouldn't be worrying about the fact he accidentally released Lyric. He had no idea what was in that tomb, so how would any of this be his fault? Well, technically it is his fault, but that shouldn't be his main fault. If he did have anything to apologize for, it would be this f***ing scene that, I swear, I'm gonna snap at someone's neck every time I see it.
Hey guys, Nitsa Gamer here, and I'm alright. I mean, after seeing that horrid moment with Sonic, what is this?
You have no idea how much that scene really pissed me off. And there's no way that they can redeem it with what they have put out. I'm having speech impediment already, and I can't even talk straight. That scene just really pissed me off. It ruined my childhood. I know it's a stupid saying, but it really ruined my childhood. Well, all I can say is, my following countdown, I might consider canceling it, considering the fact that this countdown's pretty much already botched. I mean, oh my god. I'm just ready to tear this console apart with the gaming system in it, because it has corrupted my Wii U and has already put that 1 gigabyte in it just for the goddamn patch! Regardless, I still have 2 more worse things on this countdown, and while it may not anger me as much as the third one, it still is bad regardless. So, without further ado, let's get to the top 2 worst things in Sonic Boom: Rise of the Angry Nitsa Gamer! Frame rating and rendering issues. Well, this was probably the most obvious point to appear on my countdown, and while this may not be number 1, it's still a problem and borderline unacceptable with how this game was distributed to us. And even with the latest patch that came out, it hasn't improved the obvious moments where the game lags the most. If anything, I think all that patch was good for was to add more light into the cutscenes and getting rid of Knuckles' jump glitch. But how can you overlook this? It's practically the first problem you notice, and it's pretty bad when the first level gives you an insight of what you're in store for. Cutscenes barely run smooth and usually have that one awkward frame between cuts. Running sections are such a pain when you're trying to avoid obstacles, The loops during the run-in sections make bumpy roller coasters look smooth. Shadows don't render until you get close to an area. Oh, and Shadow himself. The camera in the forest is zoomed in obnoxiously close at Sonic, just like the town of Bygone Island. And there's plenty of more issues as seen later on. For example, after I helped Dr. Ginger find her ingredients for her medicine, I went over to the area where you're supposed to run to the next hub, and for some reason the road wasn't rendered until I stepped on it. Or right after you finish off the robots outside of Lyric's tomb, you see for 3 frames, that's right, 3 frames of the characters already in the tomb but with creepy as hell stand-ins of themselves. There's so many problems with the presentation of Rise of Lyric that surprisingly in comparison to Sonic 06, Sonic 06 had little to no rendering or frame rate problems. It was mostly just horrendous gameplay. In Rise of Lyric, however, it is the exact opposite. And honestly, if you were to pick between distracted renderings that get in your way or broken gameplay that you can manipulate, which one sounds more fun? In many ways, this proves Rise of Lyric is without a doubt the worst Sonic game, even if you compared it to Sonic 06. Say what you want that the game has some solid mechanics, but how can these obvious rendering problems not bother you? The frame rating is all over the place that you feel like an idiot running into obstacles during the running sections, or heck, even when there's nothing there at all. It's like Big Red Button is trying to piss us off. So why is Big Red Button trying to piss us off? Because we're f***ing stupid to them, that's why! You will be suffering through headaches, and the hate will fill you up with everything else that is wrong with this game. Now, to be a little bit fair to Big Red Button, the last 3 levels of the game, while they still have their frame rate and rendering problems, are probably the most polished out levels in the game. Like, they knew we would criticize the game, so they had to polish out the last 3 levels as much as possible. But then again, you could argue that makes the game even more angering as, yeah, they try to make us feel more optimistic near the end as if they're trying to make us forget the worst that came from before.
I don't know what we were so worried about 15 seconds ago.
I don't even remember 15 seconds ago.
Video games is a visual experience that we have control of. And if the world you want to create can't render properly, then why should we be invested in this world at all? Well, if none of this is awkward to you guys, I think it's about time you quit smoking Quincy's exhaust pipes and sleep with a fucking kitten for your own good.
We're better at this in our world.
And the #1 worst thing in Sonic Boom Rise of Shit is... the bajillion missed opportunities. I know this seems like a major cop-out, but honestly, there's a lot to address. If I was able to sum up this game in one word, it would be a major missed opportunity.
Isn't that 2?
Take every point that I have said before, as they themselves can count as a missed opportunity. But unfortunately, there's so much more I can harp on, so I might as well name as many as I can. Think of #1 as dishonorable mentions. The little bits that make you hate the game even more despite the other flaws being bigger. Now, the only time any of the characters and not just Sonic can run fast is if they're running through the speed sections or come across one of those dash pads. Whatever. But when it comes to exploring an open world like Bygone Island, it just feels like less of a Sonic game if Sonic is not running fast like he's supposed to. Obviously, they made Sonic have the same running speed as the others, so that way you wouldn't play as him all the time. But why couldn't we at least get some sort of speed during the explorations? You can spin dash, sure, but it's like walking backwards in Ocarina at a time. No one has the patience to do that. Now, if they gave Sonic an upgrade later on in the game where he could run fast, then that would have been a great feature. But nope, we're just given the power of Jesus. Now, I would tolerate Shadow a little bit more if you answer one question. What the f*** is he even doing in this game? Now, I don't mean what he does or what he did do for our heroes. I mean, what is Cliff's personality? The best I can assume is he has a sarcastic sense of humor and is a kind and well-spoken person. But unlike Quincy, who was given a decent amount of time in the game, I never really felt Cliff was really that good. Nothing terrible, but nothing good. The reason being is because he was lacking screen time for us to get to know who he is as a character. which makes him easily forgettable. But what makes him stand out more than most NPCs is that he's given a role to help our heroes rather than the other way around. So because of that, he's an okay character, but the missed opportunity I'm talking about is knowing who he is personally.
Not cool, Sonic.
And this is why you need to hire a student in his second semester to do the animation, not the first. Amy admires the view, Sonic tries to poke her, Amy says she's had enough, and they continue on with their lives. And that was more development than anything between our main characters.
Don't just stand there. We got a snake to catch.
Wow, what a terrible payoff. Well, congratulations, Elise. I have to like the kiss you give Sonic now. Now, to be fair, the first half of this is okay, but the second half is where it gets really irritating as it's hard to target your shots at the robots. The target and movement mechanic are both on the same analog stick. If you die here, you have to repeat the entire level again from the start. This frustrated me so much, I don't think I've ever been so angry at a game like this before. God damn it! I don't want to do this again! Just stop it! Case in point, guys, add good controls and add a friggin' checkpoint at the halfway spot. There was that bit of backstory for Lyric for sure, but why couldn't his character be more developed after this? Sure, he goes through a partnership with Dr. Eggman, but it doesn't last very long as it's not really needed. If anything, I was hoping they would give him some sort of dilemma during the climax, but instead he is given no respect as a person and is reduced down to being a generic villain with no good character arc.
1,000 years later and you're still predictable.
Now obviously these are animations that will play when our characters have a conversation between each other. And since it is a game targeted towards kids, I get it's better if the dialogue is voice acted rather than something we have to read. But good god, does the lips and eye contact not match up with the voice acting. And I don't think calling this a dub would justify the awkwardness. Tails for some reason seems to look off to the side and Amy's mouth is awkwardly animated. I mean, if this was a game back in the Nintendo 64 days, it would be more forgiven. But how is it that Sonic Adventure has more believable contact with its stiff animation and basic stances than the conversations in this game?
Ooh, I would have made a huge mistake. Thank you so much for fixing this. Oh my, that would have been deadly. How on earth did you know?
One of the best things I love about a Sonic game is listening to its soundtrack. Every song is catchy and it fits the tone of the story or stage you're in. And plus, it puts you in a good mood to press forward. Heck, even Sonic 06, which is an awful game, has an awesome soundtrack that it's probably my most controversial feedback that I've gotten for not including this as number 1 on my top 7 countdown list. Rise of Lyric, on the other hand, has without a doubt the most forgettable music that you can ever imagine, which is a shame because to its credit, the tracks are not that bad. They fit the tone of the events going on and the type of environment you are exploring, but the one thing they lack is motivation. When I think back to this game, I mostly think of somebody playing a flute encouraging you to sleep rather than Mystic ruining the shit out of you.
We're here.
Now if that was in the background, I would take Bygone Island off this list. Maybe. Even the title screen music, which is probably the most memorable piece, plays off as a generic platformer rather than sounding like its own unique piece of music. Orbot and Cubot can make better music than this game altogether.
Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer due. I'm half crazy, all for the love of you.
Yeesh.
Now, the moral of the story I'm talking about is not that Sonic realizes his friends are a strength, as I did address the moral as a problem in number 3, but rather what this game was supposed to be about, the dilemma of what Lyric and our heroes are fighting for. Nature versus technology. Don't believe me? Look it up, as the game's producer Stephen Frost stated it was the franchise's main conflict. And while none of that seems to be the conflict in the TV show so far, as it stands out the way it is, Rise of Lyric does show signs of that. You got our main characters who are organic life forms. You got Quincy, who is a robot and loves nature. You got Lyric, who represents the organic life form who only trusts technology and goes to the extreme to prove life would be better if the planet was nothing but machine and metal. And even the mechanics of the worlds you go through shows that diverse connection. It had a good setup, but in the end, it ends with a hero triumphs against villain climax. Guys, what the f***? You had a great intention to tackle a subject that could be very effective, especially with how technology is evolving nowadays, and yet you still end up botching it up. You practically had a theme with no given moral. I was hoping that at the end of the game, it would display some sort of moral to exclude the argument on people who would prefer nature or technology, in that in reality, both are needed to move forward. Or maybe Lyric could have a last minute dilemma before he breaks into uncertainty and just goes to his extreme anyway. I mean, what the hell are kids supposed to learn from this game anyway, aside from the obvious cliched teamwork moral? Look at the reviews before you pay money for this garbage? Well, even if the theme is there, the moral is definitely the biggest missed opportunity of the entire game. And in the end, these opportunities could have resulted in a game that's worth the price of admission.
And in the end, that's all the game is. A huge missed opportunity, and one that greatly backfired.
And it is such a shame, because there was great potential for Rise of Lyric, especially since none of the other TV shows had their own game, and for the fact that the gameplay style goes for more of an action-adventure on foot like Crash Bandicoot, instead of the same formula we're always familiar with. But in the end, it just became repetitive filler with no passion or ambition. If you're gonna make changes to the characters, fine. If you want half of it to be combat-style gameplay, fine. But this game is nothing more than a poorly written, terribly rendered, unfocused mess. It's a poorly executed game that was more focused on putting stereotypes of stereotypes in the roles of the characters we love and seeing them triumph, rather than being a game that dives into the new characters and how this flawlessly connects to the Sonic Boom television show. Which is bad, because this should not reflect what the Sonic Boom universe should be like. It's supposed to be a new idea that creates a childhood experience for a new generation. One that people can look back on and appreciate for getting them in the Sonic universe to begin with. Or even staying faithful to the original source material. It's pretty bad when the TV show succeeds to bring out its charm, whereas Rise of Lyric gives you every reason why not to like it. It's like the jackasses behind this game never gave a shit, and I am willing to believe that as fact. I don't care how many patches you plan to make this game any better, because there's no way it can fix most of the problems that this game has already become. Even if they took Sonic's name off of this game, I still wouldn't like this dull piece of shit. And I don't know what to think anymore. Did Sega even care what the final product was going to be like? Are they willing to drag Sonic into mediocrity even more? Is there anything in this game that is redeemable or even good? I don't know. And I wish to God I knew how people can defend such a shit cake. All I know is that I hate seeing one of my favorite franchises being reduced down to this. And I don't know what to think anymore. No, I'm done. The next countdown's canceled. I'm done. Done.